I would like to welcome Andrew G. Steele, who has served as the director of the ELCA Global Church Sponsorship since April of 2015. He joined the ELCA in 2013 as the manager of donor relations for the Always Being Made New, the campaign for the ELCA, after serving as a senior major gifts officer for United Way of Metropolitan Chicago. Prior to joining United Way of Metropolitan Chicago, Andrew spent a year volunteering in Bloemfontein, is that how you say that? Okay. South Africa, as an ELCA young adult and global mission volunteer. And you're going to hear those words a lot because our new pastor also was. He is a co-host of the newly launched podcast of the ELCA called Three Sides. He is also founder of Bloom America, a 501c3 not-for-profit organization working to strengthen communities and empower orphans in Lesotho, Africa. Andrew graduated from Wittenberg University with a degree in, yay. I don't think there are too many Wittenberg people in here. With a degree in sociology and minors in Africana studies, urban studies, and business. So please welcome Andrew.
Well, good evening. I'm a loud guy, so I think you can hear me. It is really great to be back in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. I'm from New Jersey originally, outside of Philadelphia, so good to be back in kind of familiar territory. What is going on with your Nittany Lions? Come on, Michigan State, seriously? It's embarrassing. I got a lot of Ohio State friends because I went to college in Ohio, and it's just I'm always trying to root for Penn State. And it's been hard this year. So, it is really good to be with you. This congregation, your congregation, is incredibly generous, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've had so many great speakers come and be here, because we are being church together, and I think it's an example that we can actually set for other congregations in the ELCA. And not just through your giving of offerings and special gifts to ministries of the church, but all the ways that you're involved in your community. I've seen more ELCA branded things in the narthex and around this church than I see in most congregations. So just thank you for being the hands and feet of Jesus here in Camp Hill and the Harrisburg area. I mean, truly. So I'm here really to say thank you and to share some stories and hopefully inspire all of us about what God is doing through global mission in the ELCA. So I will tell you a little bit more about myself. That was my very professional bio. I got to write one that's not so formal because, it's so formal. So I was a Yagam. So how about this? On three, everyone say Yagam with me. On three. I know you're excited. 1, 2, 3, Yagam. Now I don't have to spell out the entire Young Adults in Global Mission again, okay? So we love our acronyms at the ELCA. This is a ministry that I did in 2010, 2011, the Young Adults in Global Mission Volunteer Program. And yes, Pastor Liz also did this program. It's how we became friends, actually, years ago through that program. It's a program kind of like the Lutheran Peace Corps, where we send young adults, 21 to 29, out into a year of service in some community around the world, partnered with a church in that country. And I'll talk more about that later. But my personal experience was in Bloemfontein, South Africa. And this was my host family, the photo on the left there. My host mom was not a nun. I know she might look like that in the photo, but interesting thing, in South Africa, the Women's Prayer League wears uniforms in the church. And so, and the men actually wear suits, and every denomination's color-coded. So the Lutherans are black and white, of course. So, when you're going to church on a Sunday, it's fascinating because you could tell who's what denomination. They're the Methodists, they're red and white. Oh, the blue and white. Presbyterians, there go the Lutherans walking to church, So it was an incredible experience for me to discern what God was calling me to do. I went to Wittenberg University. It's a Lutheran college in Springfield, Ohio. Actually has a winning record against Ohio State. So, and I played football there. It was fun to have that stat from like 100 years ago. But to be honest, I was not really into church. I did not go to church in college unless I was home. And maybe that's because both of my parents are pastors. I'm what you call a PK squared, okay? And so, I liked church, but I was kind of like, oh, now I don't have to go, right? But then I found out about this program. My dad was the one who told me about it. And I wanted to do service. I didn't know where or how long or what exactly. But I found out that the church, our church, my church, has this volunteer program for young adults to go and really your only job is to be in community, to live simply, to be in community, and to serve, to be a volunteer. And so I signed up, and I was very lucky to be sent to South Africa. And if it wasn't for that experience, I would not be standing here tonight working for the church. I can assure you that. And I'll get more into it a little bit later. But then this other photo is just from a couple weeks ago. Now as the director for Global Church Sponsorship, that's my title officially. Basically, we are the advancement team for global mission. So going out, telling the stories, encouraging generosity towards these ministries, doing marketing communications. And so we led a trip of 12 ELCA members from around the country to Tanzania and Rwanda. And so this was a photo with me and Meure, who was my host, because I actually one night slept in a boma, which was his home, a hut in a Maasai village in northern Tanzania. And it is a cool photo, I gotta admit. It's probably the coolest photo of myself ever. I'm not that cool. I'm not Anthony Bourdain or anything like that. But now I get the chance to travel across this church and to share stories and to hear stories as well. It's really an incredible call I have, and I'm so happy to be here. So before we get started, I want the tables to just spend about like a minute or two to reflect on a couple questions. And the first one is, what's your impression when you hear the word missionary? It's a word we've all heard for a long time. There are certain connotations that we have with that word. I'd love for you for the next minute or so to discuss that with your table. What do you think about when you hear the word missionary? Any brave tables just want to share some of the words or thoughts? It's not a quiz, there's no right or wrong answer here. I mean, missionaries, if you saw the movie Hawaii, what missionaries did in Hawaii was very negative. And that was a first thought that came to mind. We've moved on past that as a comment. Yes. Bring God's word to underdeveloped countries. Any other reflections? Show God's love. Now, we got a former missionary over here, so that's kind of cheating. Any other former missionaries I should know about in the crowd here? Okay, yeah, great. Any other reflections or things you want to share just on that topic? Because I want us to, yes, medical missionary in China. Well, a medical missionary in China in the early 1900s. So we're gonna wrestle with this question a little bit through this presentation, and hopefully we'll all leave with maybe a different understanding of what is or who is a missionary today. So the next question. What do you think about when you hear global evangelism? Kind of tied to that first question, but what do you think about the word evangelism, especially in a global context? Spend the next minute or two talking about that. Okay, global evangelism. What does that bring to mind? What comes to mind? Again, missionaries was a good answer there. Missionaries was something that came to mind. Yes? Spreading the good news. We're all on the same page there, okay. That's easy. Great. Again, we're going to talk about this and see how it's being done in maybe different ways than we are accustomed to. So I'm going to show 3 videos tonight that tell part of the story of global mission. The first one is featuring work in Tanzania, in northern Tanzania, in Maasai communities on the border with Kenya, where we have had 2 missionaries, or a missionary family, the Freeberg family, Dr. Steve Freeberg and his wife Bethany and their 3 children, who've lived in this Maasai village for over 20 years. And Dr. Steve is a doctor, and he has been helping set up and establish rural health clinics all throughout the Maasai area of northern Tanzania. That is all now locally run and operated by the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania. So we're going to watch this first video to learn more about their story as missionaries in Tanzania.
I've always had a strong feeling that all Christians are missionaries. I'm always struck by how wonderful it is when people have committed their life to the Lord and are praying, Lord Jesus, show me how to live out my Christianity today. That's what a missionary is.
My father was a Lutheran pastor, and my mom was a nurse in a mission hospital over here when I was growing up. So Africa and Lutheranism are very much part of my identity.
Overall, if you have a sense of, we are fortunate to be here, we are guests of the church. God has given us this chance to be here. What a privilege.
What's been really, really valuable for me is to work with a dozen Tanzanian colleagues and to have worked with them long term and sort of to have solved problems and face challenges with a group of Tanzanians rather than being an individual and trying to solve problems alone. And we're in the process of training 12 young Maasai who understand the culture and don't see the local environment, harsh as it is, as a disadvantage.
I just wanted to be a doctor, not because it's a good job or just something which people admire of, but I wanted to work for others, giving my best to others. The church is very important to me, not only my local church, but even Tanzania and my home place, and even abroad, outside our own continent. The church is very important. Even though I'm here because of the church, and I'm a doctor because of the church.
So it's been very, very helpful for me to have come back and been an adult in Tanzania, where the church puts a high priority on human relationship. Faith is much more a community faith.
And your calling as a Christian person living out your faith where you are in the U.S. or here, what it comes down to are the roots that you have in Christ. That's what's going to sustain you.
I think a little bit in the West, we put a high stress on technology. We look at the finances. We know the importance of training. We want accurate information. But I think Africans are telling us that's only part of the story. And if we don't leave optimism, if we don't leave hope, if we don't let our interpersonal relations, if we don't let our dependence on God, our confidence in God, connect with those other tools, we're not going to be able to face the challenges of life successfully.
So, pretty cool stuff. Some really amazing takeaways from this video. One, every single person you saw in that video is a Lutheran. Think about that, right? That was a Lutheran choir singing and dancing in a Lutheran church. Little different than what we think about of what does a Lutheran look like, right? Number two, what a beautiful thing that Bethany starts the video off saying, all Christians are missionaries. So let's think about that too, about our own Christian Lutherans here in America. I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe all Christians are missionaries, and we are missionaries here in our own community. And then the last one is accompaniment. This is a word that we use in the ELCA to define and use it really as our theology for mission globally. It's about walking side by side those we're serving, hand in hand, sharing an interdependence and mutuality with those we're serving, not going and doing to those people, for those people, evangelizing those people. Instead, we live in community. We spend time together, accompanying them and they us. So Steve and Bethany have been in Ketumbeni, that rural village in Tanzania, for over 20 years. And it's taken that long for those 12 clinics to become established. It took 6 years until the women, that beading project, Napak, the 60 women who make the jewelry, took 6 years until they could trust Bethany enough to say, can you help us get this started? This is a long-term strategy, if you will, with Global Mission, and so much of what we do is based off of relationships. The Companion Synod with the Conde Diocese that is started here in Lower Susquehanna, that's because of a relationship with the former bishop had with his companion in Tanzania. That's powerful, that we're building all of this off of relationship, accompaniment. So this is the foundation for all that we do in Global Mission, and that even includes our ELCA World Hunger ministry, but specifically when it comes to missionaries and sending people. We're not sending necessarily to go and to do and to teach and to do, but instead to do it together. And like Steve said, we do it as colleagues, solving issues together, not as an individual. So remember this word, and this is just the foundation of how we do Global Mission. So here are just some facts for you about the global church, and some you may not be familiar with. So there's something called the Lutheran World Federation. It's kind of the Lutheran United Nations. They are based in Geneva, Switzerland, and it's kind of the umbrella of 148 member Lutheran churches from around the world, making up 75.5 million Lutherans. Now, the ELCA, we have about 3.5 million members now. So we're not the biggest Lutheran church in the world. We're not actually even close. I usually like to do trivia, and I think hopefully you can read this, but the largest Lutheran church in the world is in Ethiopia. 9 million Lutherans in Ethiopia. The fastest growing Lutheran church in the world is in Tanzania. 7 million Lutherans, and they're growing at double-digit percentage points every single year. And Madagascar, a country of 22 million people, 4 million of them are Lutheran. Papua New Guinea has as many Lutherans as we have. Indonesia, the country with the most Muslims in the world, they also have more Lutherans than we have in this country. There are more Lutherans of color in the Lutheran World Federation in the world now than those who are of European descent. And so the church is changing. It's not dying. And here we're seeing church change. But we need to look to our global companions and realize that there is life and growth and exciting things happening in incredible places. When you go to Tanzania, I mean, these are some mega Lutheran churches. And what's funny is the liturgy is pretty much the same exact as ours. And so it's as Lutheran as it comes. It just might be in Swahili or in Maasai, but it is a Lutheran church service. So we think there's a lot that we have to learn from now from our companions. So these are our four main components right now that are priorities of Global Mission. Ministries that we are investing in, ministries that we are growing and trying to sustain. So number one is missionaries. We've had missionaries long before the ELCA was the ELCA and 100 years ago in China and all over the world. And because of those relationships built then, it is enabling us to be in these places now. Young adults in Global Mission, YAGM. Again, we'll talk more about that. The International Women Leaders Initiative. This is a scholarship fund for Lutheran women from our companion churches around the world to come to our ELCA colleges and universities and also study theological education and go to global leadership academies. So we'll talk more about that. And then global evangelism projects that we are not doing anymore, but we are investing in our companions. So we're not the ones going into countries and just building buildings and community centers and doing all that, but it's our companions who start these projects, and then we come in and partner with them along the way. So, missionaries. We still have missionaries. that are serving around the world. And there's, in the back of the room, when you head out tonight, hopefully grab some materials. We have annual directories over there of all of our missionaries serving all over the world. And they're doing very interesting things, but we also have some missionary positions that their job is to be in community representing the ELCA, going to meetings, helping our companions with their constitution or their bylaws or getting things in order in that way. So it's not so much of sending pastors out to proclaim the gospel in communities that have not heard the gospel. Because what sense would it make sending a bunch of missionaries to Tanzania where the church is stronger and thriving way more than it is here, right? They don't necessarily need our missionaries in that way. But in the medical field, for example, the church there in Tanzania, they run 75 to 80% of all the rural health care in Tanzania. And mainly the only palliative care ministry in the entire country is done by the Lutheran Church. So we do have a number of missionaries in Tanzania, but we ask our companions, what are the needs in your communities? What are the needs in your church? How can we come together on that? And that's why we have so many doctors in Tanzania. And so I have another video to show you of the Swanson family. So Steve was a professor at the University of Minnesota Medical School, and he was overseeing pediatric care at Hennepin County Hospital in Minneapolis. Harvard-educated guy, brilliant teaching doctor. He grew up a missionary kid, so he always felt called to go back into being a missionary around the world. And so now they're serving at Arusha Lutheran Medical Center in Arusha, Tanzania. And this is an example of being, there is specifics to some of the ministry that we do, but they're not all as specific as being a doctor. But we wanted to give you an idea, too, of that we have medical missionaries, and not a lot of churches actually provide that anymore globally. So go ahead and, yep.
There are people all around the world that do not have these resources. What is it like to face your child being sick and not have the medicine that you need?
It may never go beyond the fact that the families know that I'm a Christian and that I'm here with the Lutheran Church. I may never have an opportunity to share the gospel in a traditional sense, but in an untraditional way, I am sharing the gospel. Every moment I value life, and I promote healing and wellness. We chose to come to Tanzania because there were the hospitals, and the Lutheran Church was willing to embrace and support us in the desire to work in global health and in pediatrics and in physician training. There are very few organizations today that are willing to sponsor full-time medical missionaries to go work overseas. So I'm involved in working and training physicians at two different hospitals, one called Arusha Lutheran Medical Center and its sister hospital, Selian Lutheran Hospital. At both hospitals, I have teams of young doctors and interns that I'm working alongside. These are Tanzanians.
I'm Dr. Amon Jackson, born and raised in Arusha. I am a inhabitant of here, a Maasai by tribe. I didn't knew that I would be a doctor one day, but meeting Steve and Matthew added a passion in terms of how they were supervising us. Meeting a different person from a different country with another different way of supervising you made us love pediatric. I didn't even knew that I'll end up being in pediatric eventually, but I ended up being in pediatric, enjoying it.
Maybe one of the greatest joys also is seeing these doctors and nurses rise up in their level of what they can do and realize they themselves can do more than they thought.
These doctors give me so much hope for this country. Because they are the ones that are going to shake the tree and rattle and stomp on the ground and demand that things are better than they are right now. And teaching is at my heart and at my core value among the most important things I do. In addition, we have started here, probably the highest level of care for critically ill newborns, which is what we call a neonatal intensive care unit. My wife and I have been the recipient of far more gifts by living and working in Africa than we've ever given back.
We're working with people who are deep in poverty and they do not have the resources for the medicine that they need. That's where I think we step in and need to help, out of compassionate heart, to take our place in the world to say, we're going to share our resources with you.
The doctors who have come here, short-term and long-term, become completely changed in how they think about medicine through working in this setting. They become much more conscious of price, around social inequities of healthcare, around cutting costs. They change how they practice their medicine when they go back to the United States or their other countries.
Fridays I come in, I can see a clinic that's going on with or without me, and mothers who are being helped and being evaluated, babies who are getting better, children who are getting better, and just to work alongside these Tanzanian nurses is probably something that gives me the greatest joy.
The world today calls for a more expansive model of what it means to be a Christian working internationally. It's not about numbers or counting souls. It's walking in the footsteps of Jesus, as in my case as a physician, the great healer, somebody who comes with compassion and healing and models that to other people. In all of these situations and settings, as a missionary, I represent the hands of Jesus to that child, to that family. And in caring for them and in loving and in offering them the highest quality of medical care possible in this country, that I am serving as a missionary.
So again, you hear these themes of walking alongside and that being such a joy. What's interesting, the church in Tanzania, they are so committed to serving the people in a holistic way. So education, healthcare, and church. They serve all of their members and everyone around them in that way. And so they see our doctors and our missionaries serving in this way as this is a ministry of the church. And the ELCA is very unique now in the United States, where we are the last mainline denomination left in all of North America that does not require our missionaries to fundraise their salaries to be missionaries. So if you want to be a missionary with the Methodists, the Presbyterians, Missouri Synod, they say, great, we'd love for you to be a missionary, but you have to go and spend however long it's going to take you to raise $80,000, $100,000 a year. Think about, we wouldn't be able to have medical missionaries if that was the case. So we're very unique in the sense that we've stayed committed to having missionaries around the world. And that's really only possible because congregations like yours, because you sponsor our missionaries. We have 1,000 congregations out of our 9,500 that sponsor missionaries every year, that make it possible for us to not have to require our missionaries to fundraise their salaries, who can then be committed to being in the community and serving. Now I'm going to switch up to young adults and global mission. Are there any questions about missionaries? And we can get some at the end too, but just wanted to check now if you have any questions about missionaries. Does anyone want to be a missionary? I mean, come on, that's pretty cool stuff. We're looking for some missionaries if you know anyone. In Tanzania, actually, is one of the places. Okay, so the YAGM program, my favorite thing. The flagship ministry of the church, the leadership development program that is really having a great impact in the ELCA. So when this program started 19 years ago, it started with 10 volunteers in the United Kingdom, of all places. We now, last year, we sent 95 into service. When I served 8 years ago, I was one of 45. So even just in the last 8 years, we have grown this program. We've more than doubled it. And we're kind of the church that is always asking, where are the young adults? There are no young adults in our church. Where are they? They're here. We have them. The unfortunate scenario, though, has been over the last 5-6 years, we've had to turn away about 50% of the young adults who apply because we haven't had the financial capacity to send them. Because of the campaign for the ELCA, and again, generosity from individuals and congregations, we've been able to grow this program. And thank God for that, because These are incredible future leaders and current leaders of our church. I mean, you have one right here, right? So here's an investment by the ELCA in young adult leaders who are showing signs of servant leadership. And over 30% go on to seminary. 30% of our YAGM alumni. So if we have about 90 a year, that's really significant in a time when people aren't going to seminary. You've probably heard of the pastor shortage we're having across the ELCA. It's a big problem. Well, here's a leadership development program that's finding folks who maybe were already on the path, but it's watering the seeds, or at least maybe even planting seeds with some folks. I have a friend who was a Baptist from Texas. He went to Texas Lutheran University. Now, you don't have to be Lutheran to do this program. You have to have a Lutheran connection. So if you went to any ELCA college or a Lutheran camp, you can do the program. Well, he went through the program, served in Uruguay, came home and was like, you know what? I think I want to be a Lutheran pastor. This has become an evangelism ministry of ours, actually. And even this year alone, we have 8 women who are actually Missouri Synod Lutherans. Somehow found out about the YAGM program, and I'm guessing we'll probably come home and join the ELCA. Now, I get excited over the 30% who go to seminary. I almost get more excited about the 70% who don't. And no offense to the pastors in the room, again, we need pastors, but we need really strong lay leaders who are about to step up in key leadership positions in this church, especially at a time when our pastors are going to have to start serving multi-point parishes, right? We're going to need folks who are willing to preach, things that we do as YAGM out when we're serving. We're reaching almost 1,000 alumni. Next year we'll have about 1,000 alumni of the program, the 20th anniversary year. And so we're starting to show up at synod assemblies. We're starting to show up at church-wide assembly. And here is an example of how global mission becomes local mission. Because these young adults, they just spend 1 year in service, but they come home fired up. Not just about the world and about themselves, but themselves in the church. It's really incredible to see alumni all over the country who are joining their church councils, who are going to church maybe for the first time in their lives. It's an exciting program. Now, we need your help recruiting for it, okay, as well as your dollars, but we need your help recruiting young adults. So your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbors, whoever, tell the word that we have this program. I got lucky that my dad told me my senior year of college that it existed, but it's hard. We know how hard the communication is in our church getting the word out. So hopefully after tonight, you'll all know what YAGM is, and you'll be able to help us recruit. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story about something that happened during my year where the whole accompaniment thing finally clicked for me. And then I am going to ask Pastor Liz to come up and share a story from her year as well, because when I know someone in the crowd, I put them on the spot. And she's a pastor. She's used to it, right? I mean, so my placement site in Bloemfontein was actually on a farm outside of the city. So there was an orphanage on a pretty big farm, which is great. There were like 70 kids who lived on this orphanage, and right away, that was hilarious because I grew up, like I said, in like the suburbs of New Jersey. New Jersey's the garden state, but it is not the farm state. I had no idea what I was doing. I was a fish out of water. And right away, the first day they come up and the folks who were kind of running the farm said, all right, Andrew, we're so glad you're here. Here are your boots. We need you to build us a chicken coop by the end of the week. I'm like, I don't even know what a chicken coop looks like. No offense to Wittenberg, but they didn't teach me that in class, okay? I was a sociology major. So right away, you are humbled, right? You come through these, most of our YAGM come right out of college, big fancy college degrees. They feel really good about their big resume. And then you get dropped off in the middle of South Africa, and you quickly realize you don't know everything, right? And so that was a first lesson for me. But then I kind of got my sea legs. I figured out how to do some things on the farm. It was fun to learn and to always go out and experience new things. Now, there was one day on the farm that our job for that day or two was to plant a field of corn. But we had to do it by hand. In a lot of countries around the world, they don't have big, fancy machinery. And so these projects, these tasks, which could take 20 minutes, might take 10, 12 hours, which it did in our case. So there were two men who worked on the farm with me, Bokang and Tabelo. And they were two men from the nearby village that would come every day and work on the farm. And so we did this work together. And there was a bit of a language gap. They didn't speak great English. I did not speak great Sesotho. But we were definitely like experiencing life together because it was hot, back-breaking stuff. I mean, kernel by kernel, all day long. So at the end of the day, though, I felt pretty good because finally I could say I accomplished something. Because people back home are like, what are you doing? Are you doing anything? You're just hanging out on the farm, Andrew. Come on. And now I was like, okay, I planted a field of corn. And I'm going to see this corn grow, and we're going to eat it or whatever. And I at least, I was doing a little like patting myself on the back. So I slept really well that night. I was like done with that project. We can do something next day. But I get a knock on the door the next morning from Bokang. And he said, Andrew, I'm so sorry. Bad news. We have to plant the field all over again. I'm like, what? No, why? He said, well, the guinea fowl came in and ate all the corn. Guinea fowl are like these wild African chickens. They're beautiful, but so we had to plant the field all over again. We had a second day of planting that field. So there are three main takeaways I had from that. Number one is I hate guinea fowl. Number two, if you can catch them, they are kind of delicious. They're very hard to catch, though. Good exercise, kind of like Rocky. But no, number three, it finally dawned on me. It took months for me to look back on this experience and realize that I was not in South Africa to plant the field of corn. I was there to live side by side those I was serving, to be with Bokang and Tobelo for 2 days planting field of corn, cursing and being hot and sweaty and upset with just the situation, sharing in our humanity. And these were two men whose skin color was different than mine, language was different, culture was different, education was different. But I was learning from them, they were learning from me. We were sharing in our humanity and in our frustrations of that day. And that is what that program is about. And that's why it's so powerful for our young adults to have those experiences, and many of us for the first time. And then we come home with this new look on what community really means. Pastor Liz now is gonna rock the house with a story from Malaysia.
All right. So as many of you know, I served in Malaysia. So I want you to imagine a really hot, sticky, sweaty day, like the hottest day of the summer. And then imagine sitting along the ocean. But for me, it was the South China Sea. I lived about a mile from the South China Sea. And this particular day was one of the hardest days of my year. I was sitting there with tears running down my face, just kind of soaking in and processing and thinking about my day and what was going on in my life. This is one of those days where I was so homesick. I could feel it, in my gut, those types of feelings. So I'm sitting there just crying, and I'm looking out over, almost like I'm looking at all of you. I was looking out over the water. And a boy and a man was on a boat, and they were coming to the shoreline. And they looked like they were going to stop their boat, and the dad was kind of like doing his thing, getting the fishing equipment together. But the little boy, he was like kind of staring at me, trying to figure me out, size me up, He makes eye contact with me. And in this moment, this little boy didn't know what he was doing, but he taught me grace in this moment. This little boy stood up. He made a giant splash from a cannonball. And as he comes up, he has this enormous grin on his face. When like little boys do something they probably shouldn't? That was that moment. He had this giant grin and gave me 2 thumbs up. He was so proud of himself. And for the first time in that day, I laughed. I was able to get past some of my troubles and and feel God's grace wash over me. It was one of those moments, Andrew talked about when he stood accompaniment. This was one of those first moments as a kid growing up as a Lutheran, really understanding what God's grace feels like.
So you should finish the presentation. They like you better. And that's the thing. We experience God in new and exciting ways. I worshiped in church every Sunday where the offering, they didn't just pass the basket down the pews and kind of the somber, okay, thanks. You had to dance up the aisle and put your offering in the basket at the front of the church. Joyous giving. Can you imagine if we did that? I don't know if we want to dance necessarily. I don't know, but and the beautiful thing, even in Tanzania and many parts of Africa, is so after church, you get in this big circle outside and you have an auction, because some folks who don't have money might have avocados, bananas, chickens, eggs. They bring their goods. It gets auctioned off to folks who can purchase them from the congregation. That money goes into the offering. So everybody gives. So you just see church differently. You see God differently. And you experience God's grace in both the expected but also the unexpected places. And I think that radical hospitality, that radical grace is exponentially felt when you're a Yagam. And that's why so many come home fired up for the church. So, any questions about this ministry before I move on? And I really, please, I think, let's make your next few months very busy. I think everyone should schedule a meeting with Pastor Liz and just have a coffee with her and ask her about her year in Malaysia. It is fascinating. Do you know that, 2013? At the 2013 Churchwide Assembly, which was a very big churchwide assembly for the ELCA, we elected a new presiding bishop, Liz spoke to the assembly about her year as a Yagam. So she's got some great stories, and I really encourage all of you to get to know her and them a little bit better. And the other cool thing about being a Yagam alumni is that you now have friends in the church who are in these leadership positions. I got to be honest. Again, I'm from New Jersey. I didn't think anybody lived in South Dakota. I thought literally only bison lived there. I go and do the Yagam program, and there's like 10 South Dakotans, all these Minnesotans, and North Dakota. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And now I have friends literally from coast to coast who are like-minded, who are involved in the church, who are becoming pastors, and I cannot wait until we get our first bishop, Yagam alum. That's going to be awesome. That's going to be great. So we're shaking this church up, and just be ready for us and embrace us and encourage us, please. Okay, the International Women Leaders Initiative. This is a brand new initiative that we started with the campaign for the ELCA 4.5 years ago. The ELCA has been giving scholarships to our companions since we started as a church. And this has been some smart investing by us as well. Because if you look at the leadership of Lutheran churches around the world, a lot of them have received scholarships from us to go get their PhDs or their MDivs. The actual current Archbishop of the Lutheran Church in Nigeria, who is the president of the Lutheran World Federation, got a scholarship from the ELCA 20 years ago to study at Luther Seminary. So who do you think? I mean, we have a great relationship now, right, with that church because of that and for other reasons. But now the only problem with this was when we would ask our companions, please send us good qualified applicants for scholarships. 7 out of 10 were men. A lot of times it was the bishops nominating themselves or his brother or his son. And that trend didn't change. And we all know the research, or hopefully we do at this point, that if you invest in women, you change communities, you change lives, you change the world. And that's how we're actually going to end poverty. It's like scientifically proven, actually, that the more educated women are, the less poverty there will be in the world. That is a fact. So our companions were just not sending us female candidates. Unfortunately, a lot of our companion churches are still in this patriarchal, more conservative cultures. For example, there's never been a female bishop in any Lutheran church in Africa yet. So we're getting close, I think, but for example. So we created this fund where we will give scholarships specifically only to women. And not just for theological education, but for undergraduate education. Because we also know the importance of educating and investing earlier in a young girl or young woman's life. So right now we have 27 students from the global south, so companions that are in developing countries, who are studying at ELCA colleges and universities. Wittenberg's got a student, our first one this year, but these are incredible young women from all around the world who are changing college campuses and are bringing a new life to our college campuses. Another component of this has been these leadership academies around the world. So we've been doing most of them in Wittenberg, Germany, where we've been inviting about 20 to 30 women to come to Wittenberg, Germany to learn about Lutheran Reformation, the Luther Reformation, women of the Reformation, to network, to build a more stronger network amongst women leaders in churches around the world. We are now this fall, next month, having our first academy in the Global South, so in India. And what's exciting about that is for the first time we're having ELCA women attend this gathering as well. Because we should also be at the table to learn and to network and to share resources. And the neat thing is they're all working on world hunger projects at this gathering as well to take back to their countries and to initiate some world hunger projects. Now, our best return on our investment as the ELCA, that probably the most public one that we could say, hey, well done us, was through this ministry. Does the name Lema Bowie ring a bell to anyone? Lema Bowie is a Liberian woman, a Lutheran Liberian woman, who in 2011 won the Nobel Peace Prize because she started a women's movement in Liberia to end the civil war there. She received a scholarship from the ELCA before she won her Nobel Peace Prize. And so those are the kind of individuals that are being lifted up and receiving some of these scholarships, and now we are in close partnership with them. And some great news. This year was the first year that we've actually had more women applicants sent to us than men. So remember I said 7 out of 10 were men? We now have more women being sent for the program, not just the international women leaders, but our other scholarships as well. So this is having an impact. And even the election of our presiding bishop, Bishop Beaton, as a female bishop, is having an impact on some of our companion churches. The church in Malawi, the bishop there was not going to ordain women. Well, over the last 4 years, he's changed his mind, and so they're going to be ordaining their first female pastor soon. So there's change happening in the church, and just by ways of being an accompaniment, we are able to be that change as well. Okay, so global ministry projects, a global evangelism. Now, this ties into that church growth in Africa and Asia that I talked about in the beginning. And I have one more video to show you about this, but I think you heard last week about the Reconciliation Lutheran Center and Clinic in Juba, South Sudan. I won't go into that because I'm sure Dan talked about it. It's an amazing, amazing ministry. I actually have a scar on my eyebrow from being there on the groundbreaking. So that's a story. If you have any time afterwards, I'll tell you about it. I'm forever scarred by this place in a great way. But what a beautiful sign of hope, right? First Lutheran church in the entire country. There were no Lutherans before this church was built. First Sunday, they had 1,500 people show up for worship. Our missionary, who is South Sudanese himself, I don't know if Dan talked about our missionaries in South Sudan, but he was here as a lost boy, one of the refugees from Sudan, found his way into an ELCA congregation, felt the call to become a pastor, then said, I want to go back home and start the Lutheran church in my country. So he left the comfort of Anoka, Minnesota, and went back to Juba, South Sudan, and is starting the Lutheran church. And he's like, Andrew, there are 500 kids at Sunday school. I don't know what to do. Do you have any ideas? I don't know. He's like, literally, what do I show them? What do I give them? And I'm like, I don't know if we even have the answer, because I don't think any of our congregations have that problem. But again, what exciting signs of hope. And yes, here was a different example where we really invested in the majority of building this. But this all came because of the invitation from the South Sudanese members of the ELCA, who now make up the second largest group of African nationals in the ELCA, South Sudanese, who came here as refugees. And guess what? Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, because it's the largest refugee resettlement agency in the country, a lot of the South Sudanese were welcomed by Lutheran congregations when they got to the airport in Fargo and places ungodly cold. But now they've. I love Fargo. I do. I promise you, I do. I did their Synod Assembly. A great people. So anyway, it's an incredible story of hope. And then I'm going to show the video, and I just want to give a little context about Senegal and the Gambia. Does anyone know where those countries are? West Africa. Okay, so Chad Rimmer was a missionary you supported in Senegal. Great. So yes, West Africa. These countries are almost entirely Muslim, about 98% Muslim countries. And yet there's a Lutheran church in Senegal, a Lutheran Development Service agency in Senegal, and now there's this new, young, growing church in the Gambia, a country that's completely landlocked by Senegal. And it was started by a couple, 2 pastors, who went to Tanzania, were educated, and said, we're going to start the Lutheran denomination in the Gambia. And so it's an incredible witness. Yeah, we got some excitement over the Gambia over there. I love it. Future missionary, future Yagam. I think we need to make T-shirts that say that. So let's go ahead and show this video about what global evangelism today looks like and how we support it. And again, I think one of the reasons why we're able to even be there is because of the history of the missionaries and partnership we've had with these Lutheran churches. We don't go anywhere until we're invited in. And that's, I think, a very important thing to know. Even when it comes to funding projects, we don't go to the church in Gambia and say, we want to build you a church. There's all these stories. I mean, I worship...
Fatu.
Now I can stop.
My name is Fatu.
School is very important in my life, but I am a dropout. I want to go to school, but unfortunately I cannot continue my education because I lost my parents.
Senegal and the Gambia are countries in West Africa. They are both approximately 95% Muslim. The churches, the Lutheran Church of Senegal and the Evangelical Lutheran Church in the Gambia, are witnesses in these predominantly Muslim places. There's a school that the Evangelical Lutheran Church in the Gambia has built, St. Andrews, where kids wouldn't be able to go to school if that school was not there. Fatu was not able to go to school, but now there's new possibilities for her daughter.
Fatima, 6 years lang.
Fatima is 6 years old. She likes learning. I take Fatima to St. Andrew's School. I want her to learn. If St. Andrew's was not here, Fatima could not go to school.
The church goes into communities and speaks to the peoples in the communities and sees what their needs are. Out of these conversations, schools are built up or a clinic is built up, and that's how the church grows, because people come to see the love of God through the actions of the people in the church.
Evangelism, I think we have to consider in 2 sides. Evangelism by words, saying God loves you, Jesus has died for you. That's our identity. That's what we believe in, especially in the Senegalese context, in a Muslim context. Evangelism through word and evangelism through deeds and actions. Being compassionate, sharing somebody's burden.
We have education services, build schools where there is a need, build hospitals where there is a need, provide medication where there are others who are sick. These are part of the holistic approach of the church.
All the activities the church is doing by witnessing the love of Jesus also show peace. And I hope that is also showing the Muslim community that we need to work together for development.
And all these are needs from the community, especially for young women and women in general.
I think that I felt the call to ministry since I was a child. It's something that I always loved when I used to see nuns and the people wearing white robes, serving and assisting the priest. And I thought, why can't I do what they're doing? I will encourage girls to come to this seminary because learning about the Word of God, there's no difference between a girl and a boy. What I know I can say that everyone is called to work for God.
So if that doesn't give you hope about the future of the church, I don't know what will, right? The church is not dying, the church is changing. I want us to leave tonight really remembering that. What's amazing about this context, for example, is the Muslim and Christian communities get along really well. They get along really well. Most of the staff at the Lutheran Development Services Agency are Muslim. And so where do you think we have a Yagam program? In Senegal. Some of our young adults are living with Muslim host families. So these young adults are learning about Islam, and the Muslim host families learning about Christianity and learning about Lutheranism. And we need this better understanding as we continue in today's world. I don't know if we have time to share this at your own table, but I want you to think about tonight and what you've learned and hopefully been inspired about. Think about something new that you've learned and tell somebody about it. I know there's a lot more folks who come to church here on Sundays and Saturdays and Thursdays, right? Tell people about something you learned tonight, whether it's about being a Yagam or that we have missionaries and they're doctors, or about educating women or global evangelism. We need you to be missionaries. We do. Our church needs all of us as Christians and as ELC members to be missionaries. And so this was, when I was in the General Secretary of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania, in his office, he had this picture on his wall. And this is a former bishop and one of the first presidents of the Lutheran World Federation from Tanzania. It says, "There is no church so big and so rich that it wouldn't depend on the gifts of others. And there is no church so small and so poor it wouldn't be able to enrich others." We have to think about that, I think, and I'll close with, there's not this us and them when it comes to the global church. It really is a we. And when I get a chance to go and visit our companions around the world, they don't see themselves any different than us. They're like, you're Lutheran and we're Lutheran. We're bros. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. I mean, we're siblings. We're in this together. We're in this together. And at a time where church membership and attendance here is declining, it is booming in Africa. And actually, our missionary, Mawin Arik, who's in Juba, South Sudan, he put it in a beautiful way. Because I asked him when I was there, I said, what would you have to say to pastors back in the ELCA about the church? Because here you got 1,500 people coming a Sunday. And he said, Andrew, think about it as it's a tree. A tree in the winter or in the fall, when it doesn't have leaves, it's not dead. It's not dying. It's just a different season. And guess what? Somewhere else around the world, when that tree has no leaves on it, there is fruit growing on that tree. So right now, Andrew, there is fruit growing on the tree in Africa. And maybe the tree where you are just doesn't have leaves on it. But it's not dead. It's not dying, right? And so I think we need to leave with that understanding. I hope you do. I hope you leave thinking and feeling like you are a missionary as well, and that there's a lot of hope in what God is doing around the global church. And it's exciting to be a part of it. So thanks so much for your attention and coming tonight. The pasta was delicious. Are there any questions or anything to close with? Yeah. Hey, thank you. That means a lot. And really the comment was about we need to get the word out. People don't know this stuff. And it's true. My parents are both pastors. I didn't know about any of this. And it's not their fault. It's no one's fault. We just have to figure out how to tell the stories. And actually, I think as Lutherans, we're sometimes like too humble. We're too quiet about the awesome stuff that God is doing through us and our church and around the world. It's okay to celebrate. It really is. Celebrate generosity. Celebrate what God is doing around the world. That's an okay thing. So these videos, they're online. They're on our YouTube channel. They're on in emails. Make sure you subscribe to our email lists. Sign up for our newsletter on the back table. Get the Living Lutheran magazine. It's got great stories in there. But again, if we're missionaries and if we're supposed to be, spreading the gospel and sharing the good news, that includes with our people in our own pews right here, right? So thank you for your kind words. Okay, awesome. Have a great night. Thank you so much.